Welcome to the ultimate guide to creating complex outfits in DAZ Studio. This is session 1. And this webinar is copyright 2017 Digital Art Live and Archie. So please welcome Archie, who's presenting today for about an hour and a half. So please use the chat box to show her your warmth and more importantly, your questions as well through the session, and I will moderate and make sure that they get answered and covered. So we will make a start. We'll make sure that we can share Archie's screen. I'll stop sharing this slide.
Okay, so let me share my screen, and as you see, I can see your chats here. I'm putting it on the other monitor, just in case you have something to say or to ask. Paul, you didn't show the pretty picture with the owl and everything, I think, but that's okay. Okay, so we have a lot of ground to cover today, but first I want to give you a rough outline what you will see during the 5 sessions, because this is just session 1 of a series of 5. And it's all about creating complex outfit not only in DAZ Studio but for DAZ Studio. So the tools we are going to use is, of course, DAZ Studio, Hexagon for modeling. We're going to use UV Mapper Pro and UV Layout for UV mapping. And at some point, I will also show you a little bit about the inside of ZBrush, but don't panic. It's only going to cover a very short segment. It's very optional. You don't have to own ZBrush. Okay, so 5 sessions. Session 1 is about basically from concept to 3D, how to work from a sketch or an initial idea and to get it out to a 3D model, how to start with a rough shape and to finalize this shape with details. I'm going to show you 2 different kinds of pieces today. You might say it's 4, but the modeling techniques covered will be 2 different pieces. You will see what I mean. Session 2 is about UV mapping and UV mapping modes. Session 3 is about rigging, and I don't just mean the automated process of rigging in DAZ Studio with the one-click solution, but also complex rigging, adding your own bones, editing your weight maps, and so on. Session 4 is about morphing and linking, so how you create your own body shape morphs, how you create movement morphs and link them to bone movement. This is this enhanced remote control down here, this ERC it's called. And session 5, the final session, is going to be about texturing and how to create your own texture tiles from scratch. You can also use your own photographs or drawings or what you have to texture your own models. Okay, so this is covering all 5 sessions in short. And this is about session 1, a short introduction. So with a quick glance, you can see it's more or less a mirrored structure. You have the dress and loin on one side and the jewels on the other side. I also forgot to put the shawl or scarf in there, so you see what I was talking about. This is the sketch I was working from. And this is really, the sketch was created before I was starting to model, so I wasn't cheating. So the 3D model I created from this is this one. And you see it's pretty close to my original concept. This is the front view, and this is the back view. So to illustrate my point, I even used the same dummy pose to show that it is very much possible to create a 3D model of a sketch or concept you made before. Okay, I'm going to close this. You saw the dress and loin shapes on there. The dress was the white part, the loin was blue, the jewels were this yellowish thing. And the tasks we have to fulfill in order to get to our goal is first find the basic shapes, the basic 3D shapes that match our concept. And we have a couple of those at our disposal in Hexagon. One is the cylinder or the box, one is the grid or the ribbon, and no, that's not right. The plane is the same as the ribbon. You have a few different shapes in there, like a sphere, like polyhedrons and everything, but we're not going to use them today. The next step would be to adapt a primitive to a needed layout. That sounds very complicated, but in essence, it's broken down to primitive actions like adding or tweaking points, adding or tweaking edges, and adding or tweaking loops. I'm going to show you all of this a little bit later. And then when you have your rough shape outlined, you're going to go from this rough shape to add finer details like adding arm openings, adding colors, and adding subdivisions, and then work your way up from subdivision shapes to more refined details. So, okay, I think this is the rough outline for the cylinder modeling section here for the dress and loin, and you see this half is more or less the mirrored piece doing more or less the same operations, but they are named a bit differently. I'm talking about details here in terms of borders and gems, and here I was talking about arm openings and colors. So this is just the same thing. Okay, that was a quick fly through as an introduction. And I think what I'm going to do now is show you a quick fly through so you get a rough idea how my modeling process is, and we are going to go into the real Hexagon files to see and take a look at all the details, and I'm going to demonstrate a few live actions on manipulating edges, polygons, and so on. So we can take it from there and you can start asking your own questions. This is going to be a sort of a slideshow mode of screenshots I have taken while I was modeling the dress. And I'm sticking to the dress for the time being because it's the first object we're going to talk about. It's our starting point, and all the techniques I will show you will be applied to the other objects, to the loin, to the jewels, and to the scarf. Okay, let's get started. First is always get your Genesis imported into Hexagon. You need her as a dummy to fit your model around. Next is you have to create a cylinder. So why a cylinder? I'm showing you here what I'm doing with this cylinder. Basically, a cylinder is the next best approximation to a human body shape. We are not boxes, we are not spheres, we are essentially made up of cylindrical shapes if you look at it that way. If you had the choice to reduce human shape to dummy shapes, you would choose cylinders. So that's what you're doing when you're looking for the primitive to create a clothing form from. So you see, it's just very primitive manipulating and tweaking. This you could call a rough corset, very rough corset. And from there on, it's just refining, adding more edges here for these cups, or adding more pieces. This process is called extruding. You're choosing one line of the garment and then you are essentially dragging more polygons in a row upwards or sideways or inwards, just into the direction you need. In this case, I was drawing this upwards to cover her chest area, and I want this top to end at her neck to create a color or a color region. So this is more or less just extruding and matching the fit and shape to the dummy figure underneath, then closing a few gaps. So don't worry, I will show you all of this in detail. This is just for the first rough impression. This is adding more edges, extruding downwards to create the skirt shape, giving this more edges, adjusting that shape, and also cutting away polygons I don't need. This is also part of the process. So this might be interesting for a few of you, how to create folds which look more or less believable or realistic. This is also extruding. You select a polygon row or an area of polygons and extrude them outwards. Then you delete the top polygons of these box shapes and weld the remaining polygons back together. Then you delete the bottom pieces and you have a rough fold, I would say. So you can repeat this over and over. You see this boxy shape also has a hint, an idea of flow with folds or wrinkles. So this is the first step for subdivision to add more density to the mesh you are going to work with. You see the fit has to be corrected, which you can do after the first subdivision stage and going on, adding more edges for detailing. Yeah, so you see the basic operations are almost always the same. It's extruding, it is adding edges, it is repositioning of areas, larger or smaller areas of a mesh. So it's not really that complicated. So what I'm doing here, I was creating an inset for the dress for the front part. I was selecting a row of edges in the front, copied that, pasted that, and then extruded a mesh piece from this. It's called a curve when you do that. And here I'm just eliminating 2 points or welding 2 points, which I don't need. And when this is done, this is just one half. I like to work in symmetry mode, so I only model one half and then copy that, mirror that, and weld those 2 pieces together. Working with symmetry has its benefits. You will see later when you're morphing a garment and it is symmetric. DAZ Studio has an option to support mirroring morphs. So you only need to do morphs for one half of your garment and you can mirror them in DAZ Studio directly. So you don't have to bother getting it all right in your modeler. So you see this is this form 2 is this piece, this form 2 is the other piece, and next they were welded together to create this form number 3, which was then worked on separately. You might have seen these weave parts, the details together with the lacing up here. This is the fine detailing that's created. Same technique as the front inset. Use a curve, extrude it, position it, and so on. Okay. So it looks really complicated when it's finished, but you are working on individual parts until you're finished. So this is, well, it's still really basic. Just the finalized result looks like, I don't know, 1,000 hours of work. So you do the same thing for the lacing. And yeah, so this is just some detailing work, cleaning up. And this is a way to add some wrinkles. We have big folds here in the back. selecting these edges and extruding them either outwards or inwards can create the finer wrinkles you get for more realism. You can do this at any place you wish. Mostly I thought where a rigid belt or constraining area joins an area where fabric is involved, those wrinkles will make sense. You see them in real garments all the time. So yeah, this is my finished dress, and from these basic operations we can go to the next piece, to the loin. But now let's take a short break, a short breather before we jump into Hexagon to take a look at the real operations. And I think it's time for my first bell. You will hear this when we enter a Q&A section.
Hooray.
Okay. So, this was a lot to absorb, I think.
Yeah, when you were going through that sequence, I popped in the chat box to ask if people had any particular pain points. And I think when we get to doing the folds, to do with that, Sean would like to see how you do that in perhaps in detail, and we'll make sure that we can get that across to him.
That's definitely one of the points I'm going to cover, Sean, because it's something you don't see demonstrated very often. And you were asking how long it would take to model that. That's difficult to say. I don't think I'm a very good example for doing models like this. Sometimes when I'm in real modeling mode, a full outfit takes me a day, 8 hours, everything complete. That's 4 or 5 pieces of about this complexity.
Used to take a lot longer, didn't it, when you were working in Poser?
No, modeling is always the same.
Oh, okay, yeah, modeling.
I remember the very first complete dress or gown outfit I made was the Lotus gown. I modeled all the pieces in 3 hours. I don't know if you are familiar with the Lotus gown. I think I can show you because it's now in the DAS shop. It's not the real product, but you can see essentially this corset, and it's got 3 different skirts, these arm wraps, it's got shoes, and yeah, I think altogether they were 8 pieces. Yeah, and I was modeling really, really fast then. I'm not so fast these days. Okay, any more questions?
Nothing at the moment. I think we're good to go.
I think they're all in a daze. Oh my god, what is she talking about?
Well, Sean said...
Yes, I save everything. Let me show you. This is something I want to stress because... No, let's do this in a different way. I have saved or copied a few modeling documents from the original project, but this dress, you are the first ones to know. Maybe the name will change, but I don't think so. This is called the Taito dress. And I have saved all my modeling stages. Do you see this? Yeah. And I'm doing this by an operation in Hexagon called incremental saving. You can find it here. Incremental saving. So when you save your first file, it's good to add a 2 or 3 digit number at the end and start with 00 or 01 or 001, whatever you choose. And then Hexagon automatically will change that number, go from 1 to 2 and so on and so forth. So There's really no manual numbering involved here, for which I am grateful. I tend to use 2-digit numbers, but I have had projects with 3 digits going up to 200. And I'm doing this for every single piece I create. You see here the jewels and the loin and the scarf, everything. So this is um, just for you to take notice. You can do this, or you choose to do it a different way. I've found working with incremental save saves me a lot of headache. If I made a mistake, I can always revert to my last version and start over. I lose nothing, I lose no work. Or if your computer decides to crash, or Hexagon decides to crash, which it does sometimes, you will have lost max an hour of work if you save regularly. Okay, so still, are there any questions here? Oh, by the way, you can also use the shortcut. It's Control Shift S. If you are looking down at your keyboard, I have cultivated this as a one-hand shortcut, pressing Control and Shift with one finger and then S with the second finger. It works. You have to train yourself, but if you do, you will always have the option to incremental save even without looking down at your keyboard. It doesn't take a second. Okay, then I think there are no questions here. So I think I'm going to start with the first live action, I can say, inside Hexagon, how to add a cylinder. You see, I'm going to start very basic. Okay, so this here is Hexagon. You will notice I don't have the default viewing mode. Default is smoothed solid, like this. You have these little icons down here in the toolbar you can switch. I don't regularly use this, only when I want to check my mesh density, so I'm going to go back to smooth solid. Now I'm going to change my view mode to front view, because that will make it a bit easier for me to position my cylinder. I'm going here to the 3D primitives and select this cylinder. I'm using the first anchor point, her navel, which is roughly in the middle of my scene. Click, drag once. That's for you to determine the diameter of your cylinder. Click another time and then draw up or down, and this determines the height of your cylinder. And then you see here in the side menu points or sections in numbers and parts sections, and then the sections. So I'm taking this down to 6 and this down to, I want a very rough cylinder, to 4. Now why I choose 6 and 4, that's simple. I want a very rough, a very low poly cylinder, which makes it easy for me to deform and position. The more polygons I have, the more I have to work to adjust the shape. So I will add more polygons later when I use subdivision. So I can now use my properties menu here to center this cylinder. Just the X position. Now I'm changing to a side view. You see this cylinder is intersecting with her body. Now I have to do something to bring back my universal manipulator in Hexagon. This sometimes happens. Then you have to just reset the display properties. So here we are. Drag this here. And to help you see what's going on inside the cylinder, switch this to transparent subselections. This is all already activated. You will see what this does. When I'm going to the edge mode, I was in object mode before. This is the edge mode. I can see through this cylinder, which will help me to see what I'm doing. Okay, now I'm back in the perspective view. And now I'm going to select my first loop. A loop is just a connected circular shaped, ring shaped area of either polygons or edges. And how you do this is simple. You just select one edge and then press L. There you go. And then I will say welcome to your first real manipulation of a 3D object. I'm going to scale this. To scale, you have to grab and click this little boxy thing beside your arrow. Here we go. And don't worry, it's going to cut into our figure, but that's pretty much normal in the first stages. So you see, scaling is one thing, moving or translating is the other you're going to do. And you're going to do this a lot. Very, 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 very many times. So everything from here on, the first few stages are more or less rinse and repeat. You're doing this over and over again. You can speed things up a little bit. You can use this box in the middle. This is going to scale all three axes. I have to be careful with that. I know I'm not doing this in the most effective way here because I'm switching back and forth and I'm rotating my object all the time. There's a way to do this differently. You can set up multiple viewports in here, keep this port here in perspective mode, switch to one side view here. I know some people do this. I don't. I don't know why. I just like rotating around, I guess. Just a hint for you people. You don't have to do this my way. Okay, so this is step one. So to speed things up a little bit, I've already prepared a modeling file. Going back to our perspective view, you see this is my cylinder, yay, with all the work done already. This is a bit bigger, has more polygons than the one I used before. Now this is this funny green line. What is this? This is called symmetry. You see this little blue highlighted button up here. When I click on this to remove it, the green line disappears. And just to demonstrate you what does symmetry do, I'm going to select a polygon here, go to polygon mode, select one polygon. You see this ghostly polygon on the other side here is our mirror selection on the other side of the figure. So when I now start to pull this out, it also moves on the other side. So yeah, symmetry is really a great tool, but 2 words of warning. The more polygons you get, the more time Hexagon will take to think about doing symmetric actions. With very high density objects, it will sometimes refuse cooperation. It just happens. And sometimes Hexagon will just trash one side of your object and you will think all your work is completely ruined, but that's not the case. You can always save your work. If your garment was completely symmetrical, you can always choose to delete one half by just selecting the polygons in question here. And of course, all those polygons in between. I'm going to cheat a little bit. I just hit J for join. This joins my 2 selections together. And hit delete. So you only have one half left now. What you're going to do now is use a vertex modeling tool up here called Symmetry. Your half cylinder was selected. You're going to choose to mirror this to the other side of this x-axis. This is the x-axis here. You're going to the negative space. You can play around with this when you use Symmetry. You will see where your mirrored half will end. And then selecting all two halves, you are going to weld these. Voila, you've more or less rescued your symmetric garment right now. And this also works for higher densities. So yeah, this is one way to make sure your object is completely symmetrical. By the way, symmetry is also a good thing in terms of UV mapping, saves you some headaches. So most UV mapping applications can make good use of symmetry, and there are also some nice tricks to get a symmetric UV map. Texture artists will absolutely love you for symmetric UV maps, I can tell you that. My own texturing artist, Shox, who I work together with, I think she enjoys doing symmetric layouts when she gets the chance to do so. So, next step, we need a little bit more edge definition up here to create our cups for the torso. Oh, I see Paul's question here. Is automatic welding of the symmetrical pieces always reliable? Not always. Sometimes you get gaps and you have to close them bit by bit manually, but there's a way to check. There is a tool up here in the vertex modeling tab that's called close. When I hit this, maybe in this case it behaved itself, but I can show you what can happen. Taking a quick detour here before we're starting to get to the add edges bit, because that's something I run into frequently. Okay, let's destroy this a little bit here. Just moving this point out of the way. Now we are welding these. Now when I hit close, of course it will show me this white outline here that there's a gap. You don't have to validate here. I really recommend you don't. This is just for showing you the problems. You go to abort. What you have to do in this case is to select these 2 points, use the scaling function to pull them together. Like this. Or if you're creative, you go up here in the Properties tab, in the Size tab, and enter 0. Now you just re-weld and it should have closed. You see, it didn't close the hole. There are ways to fix this. What I'm doing now is I'm selecting the points. These are 2 points, but so close together that at this distance they appear to be 1. I've now selected 2 of them by using the rectangular selection and dragging it over these 2, and then I'm doing this manual operation weld points. So it should have welded them. Now let's see. Yeah, it did. Okay. So one way to ensure that your symmetric garment will be mirrored nicely and the weld will be clean is select this middle axis, I like to call it, this middle edge that should be completely centered in the back and front. And you can see up here, the position is slightly off. It has a negative value for some reason. So select this, delete the value, and just type in a 0. And do the same for the size before you delete anything. So you should have really you should have a really straight and completely centered middle axis for your object. And this makes mirroring easier, this makes welding more reliable. Okay, just one of the many dirty little tricks I use.
Yeah, thanks for that, because I imagined you zooming in to the join of those symmetrical pieces to kind of spot where the weld wasn't working, particularly when you think it's welded but it's not. Mm-hmm. But of course I forget about the properties in the top right there that indicate a tiny gap, and you can just kind of mess around with those to get the gap closed.
Yeah, sometimes Hexagon won't even close that. Then you have to go. There are so many tricks involved. You can tell Hexagon to export this as an object, and then you get a menu. Okay, I'm just going to go along with this. I want to show you the export dialog here. You can merge equal points, you can merge equal normals, you can remove duplicate points, you can play around with these options, and it has a similar dialog for importing an object. So you can go back and forth a few times, try to weld them there. If nothing really works, UVMapper Pro also has an option to weld vertices. You can use that too. And that's what I sometimes have to do. I have to use Hexagon, have to use UVMapper Pro. If that doesn't work, I have to find every single hole and close it manually. So there's really no general recipe involved to do this. It's yeah, that's the part where modeling starts to be not fun.
Yeah, sorry, I've probably opened a can of worms there, but it's good to see some of these tricks involved. So yeah, that's great. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Okay. I wanted to show you how to add edges. Okay, let's do this. Up to this point, we have a cylinder which looks like she wears a rubber tube. Now we want to have some more definition for her chest area. And to do this, we would need some edges and points maybe down here, to outline the rough shape of a bra cup, whatever these things are called on clothing. So when I want to do this, I have to use one of these tessellate tools up here. There are several ways to do this. We have free tessellate. You can point and click almost everywhere on a polygon, and in theory, Hexagon should add a new point and a new edge right there, but in practice it crashes. I use this one. This orients itself by existing edges. And yeah, you see when I activate this and select an edge, this little tiny yellow square appears and tells me it's ready to add my point here. Now I click and drag down to the next edge. Click, and I have symmetry activated, so it repeats the action on my other side. Click. Go around here and click. And I think this junction here offers itself nicely to end this action. Okay, now you hit enter or validate to end this. Now we have a nice new edge, and having a new edge also means I have a new point I can move. So I'm doing this. Wow. See, more definition. And congratulations, you now know one more technique to model your outfit. This is also one of the essential techniques. it doesn't really get much more, I would say, complicated than this. Okay, if you have done all this, it should look like that. Yep, looks pretty familiar. Oh, look, I wasn't satisfied with this junction. I added another edge up here to get a closer fit, but that's okay. That's okay. That's fine. Yay. Okay, now what is next on our list? I think I mentioned how to extrude extrusions. Extrusions can be such fun if they work. How to extrude is first, you have to know what you use it for. We want this garment to go up here to her color area. Uh, where is my sketch? Let me look for my sketch. Here, you see she's got this color around her neck, and the whole dress, the whole affair is pretty closed up tightly up to the middle of her neck. Mark asks, will those triangles you created be an issue? I know Studio renders them fine, but if you submit that to DAS, do they make you clean those up? No, it's not going to be an issue. First of all, you have to know we are going to run this through at least 2 steps of subdivision. And the subdivision hexagon has the nice little feature that it turns all of your triangles, or I would say irregular polygons, into quads. So 4-sided nice and regular polygons which render out nicely. And on top of that, DAZ Studio doesn't have much or big problems rendering triangles. So it's very tolerant concerning this. But yeah, good question. Yeah. Okay, we're talking about this color piece up here. So we have to extend the mesh from here to, I would say, here. And in terms of polygon density at the present resolution, this takes about 2 rows, I would think. But just let's get started to try this. So first I'm selecting all my polygons I need for this. This up here. Okay. We stay in the vertex modeling tab and we're using this tool here called Fast Extrude. And I hit this. Nothing happens at first, obviously, but when you drag upwards, you see I'm extruding. This is this magical operation you might have heard. Of course, it strictly follows the shape of this outline, but that's not a problem. Now we're just using symmetry again. Select one point and push it back towards the figure until it touches her skin. Not too closely. There can be some air. Now this one I also have to move sideways. And there's one hidden here. I have to move this out of her body. Okay, row number 1. The reason why I'm deactivating symmetry every time I extrude is I really want to keep or retain the symmetry of the mesh. If I leave symmetry activated, it might destroy this. I don't know why Hexagon does this sometimes, but it happens, so better be safe than sorry. So back to extruding. Now we're almost even a little bit above the height of her neck. So when we move this towards his skin, we have to go down, a little bit downwards, because the end of this piece should be about at the base of her neck, I think, here. So you notice the closer you come to her actual neck, the more you will have to move this sideways. Yeah, okay. So this is how you create your, or the base for your color. Yeah, and my good old friend Nudging Points is back. So this is something you will also do a lot. And fixing this and so on and so forth. So you get a rough idea how this works. Of course, we will have to do the same thing in the back. Pull this up. First row goes here, second row goes here. Sometimes if you're not really clear where you will have your edges or which polygon row covers what, it's good to have a screenshot and you can draw in your polygon lines in a image manipulation program or do it on paper, so you have something like a rough topology sketch for you to help you. Okay, this is nudging, symmetry, and extrusion all at once. I think I will give you time for some more questions at this point.
Yeah, how was that process for everybody? I think extrusion is good fun. Creating something out of nothing. I like that.
Alchemy.
Yeah. Modeling alchemy.
Okay, I just want to make sure no one fell asleep or left the room in a panic attack.
I think another good question is, out of everyone in the room, who uses hexagon at the moment?
Yeah, right. I wanted to know that in the beginning. So, who uses hexagon? Sean, I know you do. Yeah. So you're used to hexagon crashes. Randy, okay. Anybody else? So yeah, most of the operations I'm showing you here, they exist in all the other modelers, like, yeah, Tanya says Cinema, what about Maya, Blender. They are named differently, but what I am doing here you can do in almost every modeling application. ZBrush is a little bit different. It has most of the same basic operations under a different name, but the basic concept is a different one. I think the focus is not on box modeling. You can do it now, of course, but I'm not sure I would choose Hexagon as my tool for basic modeling. That's something I feel more comfortable to do in Hexagon. Well, okay, Sean says, I've had a situation when a quad missing on the edge of the model, how to get it back? You can't use tessellation or close. Ah, I can show you something, Sean. Bear with me. We're coming to that piece. It's related to creating that color up there. So this is my official version of the dress, extruded up to her neck. Now I'm ready to go and add the polygon rows for a color. And how are we doing this? So you already know. Selecting edges. Yep. I don't have to say much. Extruding. Oh, there's one little trick involved here. You see the the border of this color is a bit irregular. That's not normal and it doesn't look nice, so we can get rid of this. Scaling this on the y-axis here down to 0. You can do it manually or you can go in here and enter a 0. Simple to remember, this is X, this is Y, this is Z or Z. These three columns for positioning, rotation, and size. And if you want to have something of an even size, you pick your appropriate column and enter the number 0. Keep ratio is different. If you check this, all the axes will be influenced and scaled in relation to each other, so I wouldn't recommend this. Just leave this. Okay, now we have a completely straight edge of the color in relation to our modeling document, but not in relation to our figure. This is different. We have to add a manual tweak here. We rotate this. Rotating, you grab these tiny hairlines. These are segments of circles here. And move this until you feel this is level to about the middle of her neck. Right. So, what happens now? Well, you know the drill. Symmetry, la la la, and so on. Now, the question of a missing polygon and how to fix this. We have a similar situation here. You know, there's something missing. This should be a closed circle when everything is done. I'm not going to nudge the rest of the points here. You know what it's going to be like. It's going to be as snug as possible. Now I want to show the trick of closing a gap. You select the two neighboring edges here, and then you use the bridge tool up here. Just click this. There we are. So to show you, this also works if you have a polygon that's defined by 4 edges like this. So if you have a real hole that was a gap, not a hole, a real hole, this is a hole. You either select these two or you select these, also works. Or you can use your old friend, the close function. Click this, click into the hole. So 3 different solutions to your problem, Sean. You're welcome. Okay, so we have a color. Let's jump to the next. I have the feeling we're going to have to do some overtime here. I'm going to speed things up a little bit. So this is my finished color with some more added definition and tweaked points, so it gets this pointy shape in the bottom here, but it's still all very low poly. And I think it's time we start thinking about what's going to happen down here. Oh, you might also notice there are a few polygons missing in between here. So that's simple, just select them and press delete. There's nothing special to this. But we're going to progress down here to create the skirt. And again, my sketch. You will notice this there's a slight dip. This is a slight V shape, even a bit more exaggerated here in the sketch, but this is completely straight. So this is a simple matter of just tweaking some points and matching those from the waist down to follow the flow of this piece. And now you can imagine what I'm going to do. select edges. I pressed L for loop, so I have all the edges selected without doing it manually. And now doing this. Yes, all the way down. And straightening this. And scaling this for a slight flare. But now the problem is that we have one huge poly row for the whole skirt. What do? We want to have some sort of even spacing between the polygons, and ideally we want the skirt polygons to be about the same size as those up here, because it makes for a nice regular topography of the mesh and also provides us with the best possible options for creating morphs. So there are different tessellate tools up here. This one is for manual mode, where you can place your points and edges the way you like. Another one, this tessellation by slice tool, does it differently. If you press Shift, it places your little square down here, which turns red, right in the middle of your selected edge. And if you click now, it creates an edge all around the skirt. So it seeks the next possible connection between edges and the available mesh. So it creates a loop naturally. And yeah, you guess if you do this a couple of times, what happened now? Yeah, hexagon just lost its little mind. Yay! This is one of the examples I hate about hexagon. You see now, sometimes you have to trick this. So you're ending this operation, choose tessellate by slice again, do this again. Ah, now it works. Now we have more or less quartered this skirt, but it can take one more. Ha! You see this? Yeah, Sean, that's correct. It does follow the topology of the line. That's the basis for its calculation, how it can select the exact middle of your leading edge or the edge you're using for this tessellation. And that's the beauty of the thing. You have nice regular polygons now in here. Yeah. Oh boy, I'm not even halfway through. So, this is a slightly modified version of the skirt. It's missing a few polygons. I deleted a few in the back, and I used my first tessellation tool up here, the surface tessellation, to create new edges and then delete the polygons I didn't want. And then I also did something else I can show you here. I welded a few points. You do this by selecting the two you want to get rid of or you want to merge, and then press weld points. This is how I did this. Okay, going back. This makes for this nice zigzag shape here. And who wanted to know about building folds? Was that you, Sean? Yeah, okay. Now I have to go back to the first skirt. I'm going to do this rough and ugly, but you will get the general idea. First, I need my base material for a fold, and I am choosing a polygon row here between these two selected ones. Joining these. Okay, I'm making this solid display so you can see what I'm doing here. Basically, I'm just extruding this polygon edge out, of course with symmetry activated. Then I'm pushing the top polygons back because the fold starts here, then fans out slightly. Yeah, so to mimic this, I'm doing this. but I don't need this boxy thing here. It looks a bit funny. I want a smooth join. So I'm selecting these 2 points here and welding them back together. So this is taken care of, and the bottom, this remaining polygon from the extrusion action is also deleted. Okay, this looks a bit funny because it's boxy, but when I add some subdivision, this is here for increased smoothing, adds a new layer of mesh density. If we do this, it looks like a fold. I think we have to tweak this a little bit, make this bigger down here, make it a bit smoother, a bit more natural, not as straight. But this is basically how you model a fold. A wrinkle is a different matter. I can show you this a bit later on. Okay, is that what you wanted to know, Sean? Okay. So you already saw subdivision, what I did. After, no, let's go back. After I created these folds in here, you see this is my rough folded, pleated or whatever skirt. I'm going up here. The thing in Hexagon is it creates something that's called dynamic geometry, and it has not created the new mesh from your subdivided object yet. You have to collapse this and do this. You do this by going down here into the dynamic geometry tab and then click on this little lightning symbol, and you see the density has changed. It has retained the new shape, but it has divided each existing polygon by 4. So for each of the original polygons, you now have 4. This was one polygon. This was one polygon, and so on. But you also notice that the dress doesn't fit anymore because with more definition, it pulled a few polygons back inward and pushed a few outward, so you have to fit this. And how you do this without going crazy? Of course, symmetry is your friend. Select one of these offending polygons which have disappeared inside your figure and then use something called soft selection here. You see these red dots appearing around your selected polygon mean every polygon ringed with a red dot is going to be influenced by what I will do to this one. And you can also enlarge this area and then start pushing and pulling. This also works with single points and so on and so forth. And that's how you're getting your garment out of your figure. Okay. So this is the newly fitted dress. And it also has a little change here. I added a new edge down here because this is to help me create this little inset seam. I don't know. There are several of them in the dress, around the cups here, in the front, around the arm openings, the belt area down here. They are all based on these new edges, and I will show you how they are created. Oh, I added some here around the collar, around the arm openings, around the cups here, around the upper torso, and the belt also has a few of them. Now, what do we do with them? Essentially, you use them to do extrusions. Again, yeah, I'm a big fan of extrusions, I admit this. So just select this and pull this out and maybe then up. You can also scale this. It's a big fun working with these extrusion thingies. So when you do this to all these areas here, to the front, to the arm openings and so on, in the end you will have something similar like this color region. I just extruded all the ring polygons here of the color, but not these front pieces. I have a small inset in here, but this is all the same technique, all extrusions. And I will then also extrude this trim here, this trim down here. And when I'm finished with all of this, I'm going to give the dress one more level of subdivision, which helps to smooth out the contours and make it look a bit more natural and less boxy. And this is a lot of work to do. It takes a lot of time. I think this is the most work intensive process you are going to find when you're doing your own models. Okay, so I think we're already past the extrusion part. I showed you in the quick slideshow how I did this dress inset. And since this is a new technique, I'm going to show you in detail how this is done. First, I need a template to create such a shape, and it's always a good idea to use what you have. So we had all this work creating this dress, so I would say we are using this dress as our template. Whoops. I'm selecting edges along the inner seam of this top region of the skirt because I want my inset to fit exactly into the skirt. So as you see, I missed a few. Okay. Nah. Anyway. So what I do now is I hit Control C for copy and Control V for paste. Now I have something that's called a curve, this thing here. This is just a line created from the position of the edges, and I can select all of this in the edges mode, select all or Control A. Now it's highlighted in blue, and now I'm extruding this. Yeah, plain and simple. Just extrude this. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm scaling this. You might already know what I'm doing here. I'm putting this right in the middle. This is my middle seam. And now I can add more edges per tessellation. And I can also go in. We have a few very small polygons in here. This really doesn't look nice, and it's a bit distracting. I think it's not such a good thing to keep them for the flow of your mesh. So I'm welding these. You just use this tool here. Click here. Don't forget to validate by hitting enter when you've welded your two polygons. Right. And tessellation by slice. Wham. Here we are. We got one half of our inset dress. Now we can copy this, mirror this, weld it, and we will end up with something like this. So this is how you create a mesh from a little bit more than nothing. A tiny curve. Um, Okay, I would say we have time for a small question segment because I see Sean has another question here. Okay, anybody else having questions? And Sean, I'm not really sure I understand what you want to say. You had issues using extrusion when the model changes direction. What do you mean when the model changes direction? Okay, I think Sean may be typing right now, so we have time for a few different. Uh, yeah. Ah, that's what you mean. Yeah. Um, yeah, that's a problem, especially when you have cylindrical or shapes or which go around, or how do you say, which envelop something. Then you can do, wait, let me look. I can do something like this. I'm going back to my color model because this presents me with the same or a similar problem you are describing. Um, yeah, when you are extruding now in just one direction, you would have an offset. It will move to the left or the right or somewhere. So what I do in those cases is I scale everything up first, but that means I am also scaling up my extruded polygons on the y-axis, so I'm moving it up and down. It's the outside is higher and lower than the inside. So to fix this, when you're done, you just scale it down on the y-axis until you get a level fit. Yeah, looks okay to me. And if that doesn't work to your satisfaction, you select the lower leading edge of your outer polygon row, and then you can move this, scale this. You can do the same to the top edge here. That's what I would do. There's no really automated answer for this. So you will always have to invest some, I would say, manual labor to get it looking right. Okay, anybody else? Okay, while I'm waiting for questions, I'm jumping to the next document. Okay, I'm half afraid people are dozing.
Yeah, I think, like I mentioned before, if there's any pain points that you remember, if you've gone through this process of modelling, whatever package you've modelled in, then let us know, and then we can sort of address those and go over into a little bit more detail about those trickier points. Like the welding, like there's different solutions for that. So.
Or another idea, if you don't have anything now, maybe you have thousands of questions after this session, and we already mentioned we would like to offer some tuition webinar in terms of a tuition session. Write it down or take screenshots. Then you can take a look at them later next week, or when do you want to do this, Paul?
Well, we'll talk about that afterwards. But at the moment, we've got is it the first Saturday of March planned out for the second session? But
Yeah.
on my schedule, I've got Sundays as well, for instance, we can use.
Yeah. Or we could use tomorrow.
Yeah.
I don't mind.
So yeah, perhaps we'll talk about it towards the end.
Yeah, okay. I think I'm going to breeze through the rest of the dress modeling and the jewels and all are more or less variations of this because I have a few more interesting things to show you what you can do with line tools and things. Okay, let's get back to hexagon. What you see here and is called form number 3 is my basis for the shoulder weaves, shoulder ribbons, these things up here. And now we're getting down to a few really tricky operations. All right. I'm hiding this. I'm going to show you how you create a ribbon. I love to use this tool, underlines the interpolated curve, setting this down to 3. The reason why I'm setting this down to 3 is that now I get a curve which is defined by 3 anchor points, and each point will later turn into an edge for a polygon. You see, I'm trying to keep it low poly. When I want more polygons, I'm adding a level of smoothing. So for the beginning, I just want it slim and easy. I'm now going to draw a line which, well, will cover the top of her shoulders and to the junction to her arm, and which will follow the shape of her body. And I'm trying to space my anchor points evenly. It's a bit wobbly. Okay. I chose my front view so that I can adapt this curve perfectly along the one axis. And my problem just is that probably this curve floats empty in space far behind my figure. Yeah. So if this happens to you, don't worry, that's pretty normal as you see. You will have to move this to its proper position here. Okay, still get a bit of floating. So I will have to adapt this a bit. Okay, let's tuck this out of the shoulder. Okay, I think this is good enough for what we want to do. Now we have a nice edge. Normally the weave is a bit more diagonal. It runs from here to here, so I can. This is just for demonstration. I'm doing this quick and dirty. So, okay, now let's select all of them, and now you guess what's happening now. Extrusion. Now come on, let's extrude. Wow. So I'm pulling this forward a little bit. So now I have a few more points to nudge. But basically, you see, I have my first ribbon. Yeah. I love extruding, just saying. So this is how you create all your ribbons. This is how you create your lacing in the front. It's all the same. It's more or less positioning a line, nudging it, extrude it. And no, it's not cheating. It's hard work. So you see, all these curves, all these lines are more or less the templates and the leading edges for this weaving pattern here. And because we are smart, we are just doing one half here in the front, and then we are going to mirror it on the back side and then nudge all the points and polygons into position because we don't want to do the same thing twice. Yeah, but now it's getting interesting because the ribbons are flat and not looking very interesting. We're going to do something to them, and this is called adding thickness and looks like this when it's finished. I'm going to show you how you do this. All right, let's select one of those shoulder ribbons up here. Yeah. So there's a tool for almost everything in Hexagon. Now, under surface modeling, you will find one that is called thickness, and that's the one I'm going to use. So thickness is also one of my favorites. So you could say extrusion and thickness. Yay, go me. You saw something happened. It added thickness to this ribbon, but it went downwards. We want it to go up, and this is what these two little buttons are for. Now I'm going to reverse the direction into which Hexagon will add its thickness. The value here determines how thick your ribbon is going to be. It's a bit too thick for my taste, so I'm adding this lower value. And I think I'm satisfied. Yep, validate, apply. Now we don't have a ribbon, we have a, yeah, what can you call this? Angular tube, whatever. Something three-dimensional, not something two-dimensional. And this is what I did to all these ribbons of the shoulder weave part. And this is how this looks like. Now they're a bit angular still, so it calls for more subdivision. And then they look like this. Nice and smooth. Yay. And this is also the stage where I created the real weave, so I started pulling and nudging them so the ribbons go down, up, so with this alternating weaving pattern, which is a great deal of fun to do. Of course, also have to do this on the back side. And when I'm done and when I'm satisfied, I'm going to select all these ribbons and mirror them to the other shoulder here. One more thing to point out. What you might want to do is to clean up your mesh. Okay, this is a bad example here. When you create this thickness, of course, your two-dimensional shape becomes three-dimensional, which means it gains an underside here. These polygons are the underside. You can see it here on the smooth ribbons as well. All of these here. And these might cause you some trouble inside of DAZ Studio because the way DAZ Studio works with AutoFit, adapting your dress to a new body shape, it might push this underlayer through the layer on top, and then you will get render artifacts. So I think the best idea is to delete all these ribbons on the underside. Don't go for two-sided objects when you create clothing that uses AutoFit. It's a good rule, it saves you a lot of headache. So this is what I did before I mirrored this weave to the other shoulder. You can see it when you look closely. They are all, hollow. They have hollow bottoms. Yeah, I'm just keeping the edges, these edge polygons here. I could delete those too, but I decided to keep them because it helps the ribbons to retain their shape when the garment is morphed. And since you now know the drill, how to work with ribbons and curve tools and thickness, you can have a guess how you create the lacing. You just don't use this interpolated curve as your basic line or curve. You use a polyline, which works like this. It's just straight, no curving going on here. You create one, position this, extrude your ribbon, add more edges with the tessellation tool, nudge it into place, and so on and so forth. You give the lacing thickness in the end, you mirror them, and then you nudge them so you have this one goes over, one goes under pattern. That's it. So when the lacing is done, it looks like this. So I made the inset transparent so it comes closer to my idea on the sketch. Now this also calls out for subdivision. Yeah, here we go. Looks nice. Of course, I also deleted the undersides of those the laces. I remember someone was asking about folds, and I believe a wrinkle is also a fold, or a fold is also a wrinkle. Um, sounds a bit wonky, but I'm going to show you how to create a wrinkle as well, because that's not so different and it's not so difficult. First, deactivate your symmetry because nothing looks more unnatural than symmetrical wrinkles. What I'm doing here, I'm selecting my edge candidates, which make good templates for some wrinkles. This is a good place below the belt here, because everywhere more rigid zones like a belt and softer fabric meet, you will get these. So you can see this belt around a waist and covering a skirt, for example, or rubber bands squashing a mesh. I say a mesh, squashing a fabric. Sorry, I'm so much in 3D mode now. Okay, how you get wrinkles? Yeah, extrude. Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's true. It's true. You can do this. Look. So you can either extrude them outwards or you can extrude them inwards. That's up to you and your taste. Just be careful when you do this inward operation. You will almost certainly have some collisions with your base figure, so you will have to adapt the mesh when you're finished. So that's how you do wrinkles. Okay, Sean, you asked, how did you collapse all the ribbons into a single model? I selected all of them and I welded them. Simple. Okay, we now have reached our theoretical end of the webinar. Now the question is, what do you want? Do you want to see the rest? I will have to really speed things up a lot. Or do we want to do this another way? But not really sure how to do it another way.
I think there's an option. Perhaps we could do a session tomorrow at the same time. I'm available to do that.
Yeah, I'm available too.
I think it all depends on trying to give you a chunk of education and not to give you too much in one go, because it's quite a lot to take in.
Oh yeah.
So maybe we can have a little vote on it. We could carry on. We do have webinars where we've carried on for another half an hour to go to 2 hours.
Yeah, but if your heads are smoking, that doesn't make sense. So I would like to hear your opinion. You want to go on, or you'd rather have it in another session so we can have more time to do this?
Yeah, we'd certainly cover all the details for you.
The basic modeling operations are now done. I have shown you everything you need to create an outfit, and you see it's not a really basic outfit, it has more complexity. So everything I'm showing from here on is either repetition or variation of this theme, or just very small changes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it looks like we got at least 3 or 4. It looks like most people are okay to do a session for tomorrow. It also allows you to review what we've done today. I could probably send out at least a streaming link, and may be able to do that, or even send out the MP4 video this evening if I can do that quick. So tomorrow starting at the same time, and love to see you then, and we can go through the jewels and the loin.
The scarf, the jewels, and the loin. We have 3 pieces left.
Yeah. Let's do that.
Yeah, so I think I'm still in favor of writing down your questions when you have them, so you can do the full program tomorrow. Now what about the tuition section? Do we do that tomorrow as well, or do we do that in a separate? I'm a little bit confused.
Yeah, I'll chat to you about that separately, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sean, yeah, of course it destroys symmetry. It does, but that's the finalizing touch to a mesh you do. And in terms of morphing in DAZ Studio, I think the mirroring of rough morphs, like shape morphs, would still work. I would have to try that, but I've never run into any problems with this. Okay. Yeah. Shall we do a last Q&A section here?
Yeah, let's ring that bell.
Okay, yeah, bell. Wake up.
Now, I think tomorrow as well, we'll use the same webinar room, so I'll send out email reminders again to when we start, a couple of hours before or an hour before.
Oh, maybe for those who want to try, you can try to model something small using a few of the techniques mentioned today, if you like. I'd like to see if these work for you, or if it's just something my wonky mind came up with all the extrusions and edges. Just a thought. I mean, nothing complete, just something very small. Weld all, no. There's a difference. You have the weld tool up here and you have the weld points up here. Weld points is really just for points. Weld is more meant for objects, not small portions of a mesh as I understand and use it. Does that help?
Oh, should we go through Sean's stuff?
Yes. Oh my God. I'm so sorry, Sean.
Yeah.
I completely forgot about your stuff.
Yeah.
Or do you want to do screen sharing? You can show us, you can tell us about what you're doing. Maybe that would be the best solution.
Yeah,
because
sure.
that's your model.
As long as Sean's got a microphone,
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to make Sean the presenter.
Yes.
Right, so what we can do is I'll have to load up stuff. Okay, so we'll give him a minute to do that. Just indicate when you're ready, Sean, and we'll also have to check your mic. Oh, at the moment.
Show us your concept, what you want to do, and then maybe a few views in hexagon, what you modeled so far.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're coming through. Yeah.
Sounds okay. Thanks.
So if Arki, if you could stop sharing your screen.
A.
And for Sean, if you use the share button, should be in the bottom center
Okay.
of Fuse. And once you click on that share button, you'll get the screen option towards the right hand side. A bar should come up when you click on share.
Your screen, yeah.
And hopefully we'll see your screen. Oh, something's coming through
Yes.
now. There we go.
Yes.
Great.
Ah,
Haha.
that looks familiar.
So this was a sketch that I did for Paul. Remember we did the if you have any models you're working on, you'd like to get together and have a critique of them about a year ago, I think. It was last May.
Oh yes, I remember that. Yeah.
And I had one that I was working on that was a male from a story that I was reading called The Wheel of Time. And everybody still there?
Yeah.
Okay. Everything went deadly quiet for a second.
I was just thinking which character it was, but I think I know.
It was the main character. It was,
Rand Arthur. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So I managed to get the dragons on his arms, but he primarily wears a cloak. So this was my original sketch for the cloak.
Mm-hmm.
I can pull up some concept art that I looked for today. So this looks pretty much like a greatcoat to me.
Mm-hmm.
Something with a little bit more embroidery around the edges.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which is a little bit more along the lines of what I was looking for. And one of my clients actually makes costumes, and this is something that he made, which would have been a 17th century French citizen. So it shows a little bit better along the lines of the kind of embroidery that I was looking for. But I never started modeling it because I was both frustrated by the folds. I couldn't figure out how to get the folds.
Mm-hmm.
So you just answered that question for me as far as I'm concerned today. And the second question, which is why I was harping on it, that I couldn't understand. So this is something that I had been working on before. This was a set of pants that were 18th century or 1800s, I should say, where they laced together. So this is the mesh where I managed to figure out how to get the eyelets in place, and then this is with the eyelets in place. But the pain that I was feeling was every time I moved the mesh, the eyelets don't move with it.
Oh, I see. That's the problem because the eyelets don't share edges with the base mesh. There's nothing for hexagon to weld them with. That's a problem. What you can do, you can use this inner hole, the loop. The edges of the inner loop as the base for your eyelets. How I did for the inset of the dress.
Yes.
Then you have a basis, and then you would have to manually weld the eyelets to the mesh. I'm sorry, there's really no other way to do this.
Okay.
But I'm just saying, I have the same problem. That's why I'm avoiding eyelets like the plague.
Well,
I tend to texture them and use a transparency map to do stuff like this. And if I want to model them, I always use ZBrush because ZBrush morphs the whole mesh and not just parts of it.
okay. You can see the number of islands that I have here, right? There, so it was 8 of them. But I couldn't.
God, you must have gone crazy.
Well, there was a webinar a while ago that said, create one and then duplicate it, like clone it, and you can clone it in any number of times.
Yeah.
And which is what I did. But what I didn't realize is then I broke the clone so that when I change one, I have to change every single one.
Then you can work with instancing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and then with the tip that you just gave me a few minutes ago about the well doll, I can now take all of these 8 islets and give them put them in a single model. So at least they're a little bit less to work with. So
Yeah.
if I want to move them in a case like this, they'll
Or you can group them. You will not lose the structure of the single models. You can group them. I can show you how.
Okay.
You just select all your eyelets, all of them,
Mm-hmm.
and then you go to the Utilities tab.
This is just a screen grab.
Yeah. Oh, I'm just saying the Utilities tab and the tool below there is one with a chain.
Right.
And that says group, and you press that, and then you will have a group which you can name. You can still open it clicking on a little arrow beside the group's name, and then you will find all the individual objects below there. And you can also ungroup it again, so you will lose nothing.
Okay. That's a good point.
Mm.
I'll try that.
That's what I use when I want to keep a certain order in my modeling documents, because I have tons of identical objects like feathers on a wing or something like that.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I'm at.
Okay, it looks impressive. I would love to see your end result.
Thank you. Well, I'll show it to you.
Yeah, I'd love to see that.
Yeah, thank you, Sean.
The screen back?
Yeah. Thank you, Sean. Yeah, that's fantastic. Thanks for sharing.
Thanks, Erky.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay. So I think we've got to a good stage there, and we'll work on these other bits tomorrow.